The room shifted. Even Melania, stone-faced until now, blinked. A flicker, a fracture, because she knew him, and he knew her. The witness swore in, his right hand steady, his voice clear. And then, within 9 seconds, everything cracked. He told a story not rehearsed, not polished. A story raw, unfiltered, with details so sharp they cut through years of carefully curated image. 9 seconds. That was all it took. 9 seconds to turn Melania's legacy, from elegance and silence, from mystery and restraint, into something brittle, something breakable. The jury leaned in, almost forgetting to breathe. The judge's eyes narrowed. Even reporters, seasoned in political battles, felt their stomachs twist. The words weren't just testimony. They were a dagger slipped under armor. And as the silence after his revelation settled like ash, all eyes turned back to Melania. She sat frozen, lips parted, chin trembling. For the first time, the mask slipped. Her legacy was not just under fire. It was unraveling in real time. The courtroom felt smaller now, the ceiling lower, the walls closer. Every person in the room leaned toward the witness, as though gravity itself had tilted in his direction. What he had said, it wasn't shouted. It wasn't even dramatic in tone. That was the power of it. The calmness cut sharper than rage. His words landed like stone dropped into water, and the ripples were still spreading. Melania's lawyer shot up instantly, his voice booming, desperate to break the spell. Objection. Irrelevant. Inflammatory. This witness is clearly... But the judge raised a hand. His gavel never touched the block. His voice was calm, almost curious. Overruled. The jury will decide relevance. The lawyer froze mid-sentence. You could see his throat bob as he swallowed his frustration. He sat down, jaw tight, pen tapping against the table like a drumbeat of panic. Melania didn't move. Not her body. Not her lips. But her eyes. Those betrayed her. A flash of disbelief, then fear, then something colder. Recognition. Jasmine Crockett, on the other hand, leaned back in her chair with deliberate ease. One hand rested on her chin, the other drummed lightly on the table. Her smile wasn't wide, just the faintest curve of lips that said, "I knew this moment was coming." The witness continued. "Mrs. Trump has built her image on silence," he said, his voice steady. "But silence is not the same as innocence. I was there. I heard the conversations. I saw the documents. And I can tell you, what's been presented to the public is not the truth. Murmurs, pen scratching, cameras whirring. What truth?" Jasmine asked, rising to her feet. Her voice sliced through the tension, like a violin string stretched too tight. The witness turned to her. For the first time, a faint smile ghosted across his lips. "The truth that this lawsuit isn't about defamation. It's about control. It's about rewriting history before it can be written by anyone else." Gasps. Melania's hand twitched on the table. She clenched her fist, nails pressing into her palm until her knuckles whitened. Her lawyer bolted up again. "Speculation. This is speculation, Your Honor." The judge didn't even look at him this time. His eyes were locked on the witness, as if measuring the weight of every syllable. "Proceed," he said quietly. And so the witness did. He painted a picture with words. Emails half erased, memos marked confidential, conversations in hallways where doors were supposed to be shut but weren't. Each detail was a brushstroke, and together they form an image far more dangerous than a single accusation. Jasmine seized the rhythm. "Can you tell the court," she asked, stepping closer, "why you decided to testify today?" The witness nodded once. His answer was short. The accusation landed like a thunderclap, not whispered, not hinted, declared, "Melania Trump has filed suit against Representative Jasmine Crockett." The word spread across the courtroom like spilled gasoline. The cameras hissed and clicked. The lights were almost blinding, turning sweat into glassy beads on foreheads. You could hear a chair squeak, a throat clear, that subtle shuffle when everyone knows history just tilted. Melania sat rigid, chin lifted. Her eyes were cold marble, the kind of stare sculptors try to capture but never quite succeed. To her left, her attorneys leaned forward, notes stacked in geometric precision. Every line rehearsed, every gesture calculated. Across the aisle, Jasmine Crockett refused to fold her hands neatly. She leaned back, shoulders loose, hair catching the light. Where Melania was stillness and frost, Jasmine was fire wrapped in velvet. A slow smile flickered at the corners of her mouth, like someone who knew the storm had just begun, and she wasn't afraid to get wet. The judge struck the gavel once. The sound echoed too long, like it was bouncing off the walls of an empty cathedral. Silence followed, the kind of silence where even the cameraman forgot to breathe. "This case is now in session," the judge intoned. Already, the crowd was divided. Half bristled with sympathy for the former First Lady, betrayed, wronged, perhaps underestimated. The other half leaned forward in electric anticipation, eager to see Jasmine, the congresswoman from Texas with sharp words and sharper instincts, tear down a Trump with nothing but her tongue. It wasn't just law. It was theater, and everyone in the room knew it. The first move came quickly. Melania's lawyer, a silver-haired man with the posture of general, rose to his feet. He didn't bother with niceties. "Your Honor, my client stands before you today because her dignity, her honor, her very legacy has been dragged to the mud by Representative Crockett's reckless words. We will prove, without a shadow of doubt, that Mrs. Trump has been slandered, humiliated, and subjected to malicious lies." He paused, letting the words soak into the wood-paneled chamber. His hand gestured, precise and sharp. "And when this trial is finished, the world will know Melania Trump is not a woman to be defamed without consequence." Gasps, murmurs, reporters scribbling like their pens were knives. But Jasmine? She barely blinked. She stood slowly, like someone rising from a chessboard knowing their next 3 moves were already set. Her voice was lower, smoother, but carried with the weight of steel hidden beneath silk. "Your Honor," she said, "the only thing being dragged to the mud here today is the truth. This lawsuit isn't about protecting dignity. It's about silencing dissent. It's about intimidation. But I promise you this." She leaned forward, gaze piercing Melania directly. "Truth doesn't bow, and it doesn't break." The room erupted. The judge banged the gavel again, demanding order. But the lines had already been drawn. Melania, icy, unyielding. Jasmine, fiery, unafraid. And in between them, the promise of a war that could ruin one and immortalize the other. The opening testimonies began. Each word was a spark tossed into dry hay. The lawyers clashed, citing statements, press releases, moments on live television. They dragged out quotes, screenshots, fragments of interviews, tiny splinters of the past sharpened into weapons. But the real suspense wasn't in the lawyers. It was in the witness list. Everyone wanted to know who would step forward, who would speak the words that could tilt the entire trial. The answer came on the second day. The doors opened. The bailiff announced a name. And in walked the witness no one expected. The crowd inhaled all at once. The man's presence alone made the air crackle. He carried himself with the kind of confidence that comes only from knowing the truth is heavy and that you are strong enough to lift it. He walked slowly, each step deliberate, eyes locked forward. Not at Melania, not at Jasmine, straight at the jury. Because lies rot legacies, and the truth always finds a way out. The sentence hung in the air like thunder waiting to break. The jury shifted uncomfortably. A woman on the end bit her lip, her eyes darting between Melania and the witness. A man in the back row folded his arms, leaning forward as if trying to catch every vibration in the room. Reporters scribbled furiously. One muttered under his breath, "Front page tomorrow." No question. Melania's lawyer tried again, grasping at control. He fired questions fast, rapid fire, hoping to confuse the coroner. "Isn't it true you were dismissed from your position? Isn't it true you have a grudge? Isn't it true that you profited from speaking engagements, from interviews, from selling a narrative that benefits you?" The witness did not flinch. His answers were measured, almost chilling in their simplicity. "Yes, I was dismissed. No, I don't hold a grudge. And as for profit, truth doesn't come with a paycheck. It comes with a cost." The last word snapped like a whip. The lawyer faltered. For the first time, his rehearsed rhythm collapsed. He sat down hard, rubbing his forehead with both hands. Melania inhaled deeply, but the breath shuddered as it left her lips. She was losing the grip she had perfected for decades. The mask of composure cracked at the edges, and behind it, something raw threatened to surface. Jasmine saw it. She seized it. She stood again, eyes sharp. "Let me ask you one last question," she said to the witness. Her voice dropped lower, deliberate, pulling the room into her gravity. "In your view, what does this case truly represent?" The witness turned his gaze from Jasmine to the jury. His answer was slow, deliberate, every syllable landing with the weight of iron. This case isn't about slander. It isn't about defamation. It's about whether power can bend truth to its will. It's about whether fear can silence those who speak. And it's about whether America will accept a legacy built not on honesty, but on shadows. 9 seconds. That's all it had taken before. But now his words had become an earthquake. The jury sat stunned. The judge's gavel stayed still. And in the gallery, whispers turned to an audible buzz, as if the entire nation were contained inside four walls and had just realized the ground beneath them was shaking. Melania Trump sat motionless. Only her eyes betrayed her, glimmering not with tears, but with a fury sharp enough to cut glass. Jasmine Crockett didn't smile this time. She didn't gloat. She simply sat down slowly, like a warrior sheathing her sword after the first strike of battle. The witness had done his part. The war, however, had only just begun, and outside the courtroom, the world was already reacting. News tickers rolled across television screens. Social media erupted like a dam had broken. Allies scrambled. Critics circled. And through it all, one truth became clear. The trial was no longer about Jasmine versus Melania. It was about legacy itself. The courthouse doors burst open like a dam splitting under pressure. Reporters swarmed the steps, microphones raised, cameras swinging, voices clashing over one another in a storm of questions. What do you say to the witnesses' claims? Mrs. Trump, do you stand by your legacy? Representative Crockett, is this personal or political? The questions fell like hail, fast, hard, relentless. The air buzzed with electricity. Helicopters hummed above. The scent of sweat, coffee, and rain-soaked pavement mixed into something metallic, almost electric. Inside the building, Melania remained seated even after the judge adjourned for recess. Her lawyer whispered furiously into her ear, his hands cutting sharp lines in the air as though drawing diagrams of escape routes. She didn't respond. Her face was porcelain, flawless but fragile. Cracks invisible unless you stood close enough. Jasmine Crockett, by contrast, rose slowly. She gathered her papers with the ease of someone rearranging flowers in a vase. Calm, centered, yet her eyes gleamed. She knew momentum was on her side now, and momentum in politics was more valuable than money, more powerful than law. When she finally stepped outside, the crowd roared like a stadium at kickoff. Microphones thrust toward her face, cameras flashing, questions peppering the air. Jasmine raised one hand, palm out, and the noise dimmed, not fully, but enough. Her voice rang out, smooth yet sharp. What you saw today wasn't theater. It wasn't spectacle. It was truth. And sometimes truth makes powerful people uncomfortable. The words hit the crowd like sparks on dry kindling. Reporters shouted follow-ups. Citizens clapped. A few booed. But Jasmine didn't flinch. She leaned closer to the microphones, eyes burning under the flashbulbs. This isn't about me versus Melania Trump. It's about whether we let fear silence us. Whether we allow power to decide what's real and what isn't. And I refuse, let me say it again, I refuse to bow to intimidation. The crowd erupted. Supporters cheered. Opponents jeered. Social media feeds exploded in real time. Hashtags climbing the charts within minutes. Hashtag Crockett versus Trump. Hashtag 9 seconds. Hashtag legacy on trial. Meanwhile, Melania slipped out a side door. The cameras caught her only briefly. Her hand raised to shield her face, her stride fast but controlled. She entered a black SUV without a word. The door slammed shut, cutting off the frenzy outside like a guillotine. Inside the car, silence. Her lawyer sat across from her, tablet in hand. scrolling furiously through live coverage. Every headline was a dagger. Witness shatters Trump legacy. 9 seconds that changed everything. Crockett emerges as political firebrand. Finally, he spoke. His voice was tight, almost trembling beneath its usual polish. We need to pivot. Now. Deny, discredit, dismantle. If we don't, this narrative sticks. And if it sticks, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. Melania turned her head toward the tinted window, watching the blur of city lights rush by. Her reflection stared back at her, composed, elegant, but hollow. For years, she had cultivated an image built on mystery. Fewer words meant fewer weapons for critics. Fewer appearances meant fewer cracks to examine. But now, silence was no longer armor. It was a coffin closing in. Across the city, Jasmine returned to her hotel suite. The room smelled faintly of lemon polish and stale air conditioning. Her team crowded around laptops, phones, whiteboards scribbled with strategy. Aides buzzed with adrenaline, tossing out ideas like playing cards. Lean into the witness's testimony. Push the control narrative. People hate being silenced. Get you on primetime tonight. CNN is calling MSNBC too. Jasmine listened, nodding occasionally, but her mind was elsewhere. She replayed the look on Melania's face when the witness spoke. That frozen stillness. That split second where power looked fragile. It wasn't victory. Not yet, but it was the scent of it. Later that evening, the media battle began in earnest. Networks looped a clip of the witness's 9-second revelation until it was seared into the national consciousness. Analysts dissected every word, every pause, every twitch of Melania's jaw. One commentator leaned forward on live TV, eyes blazing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is bigger than a lawsuit. This is about whether truth can survive the weight of influence. And tonight, Jasmine Crockett has proven she's not afraid to stand against it. On another network, the defense was fierce. This is a smear campaign, plain and simple. A calculated ambush designed to humiliate the former First Lady. And let's be clear, Jasmine Crockett is turning this courtroom into a stage for her own political gain. The country split down the middle, as it always did. Half called Jasmine a hero, half called her a vulture. But one thing was certain, nobody was silent. In the quiet of night, Melania sat alone in her suite, lights dim, city glow flickering through the curtains. A glass of water sat untouched on the table. Her hands rested in her lap, perfectly still, but her mind raced. She thought of legacy, of the words shattered splash across headlines, of silence no longer serving her. For the first time in years, she wondered if her carefully built image was a fortress or a prison. Meanwhile, Jasmine stared out her own window across the same city. She thought of the witness, of the weight his words carried. She thought of the trial ahead, the storm yet to come, and she whispered to herself, not a boast, not even a declaration, just a promise. Truth doesn't bow. The war was only beginning. The witness had cracked the surface. Now, the floodwaters were coming. The courtroom on the fourth day no longer felt like a hall of justice. It felt like an arena. Reporters had camped outside overnight, their cameras trained on the heavy wooden doors, as though expecting a gladiator to emerge. Protesters on both sides gathered in waves, banners high, voices hoarse from chanting. Some shouted Jasmine's name like she was a folk hero. Others screamed Melania's like a wounded queen under siege. America didn't wait for the verdict. It picked sides instantly. In her hotel room, Jasmine stood at the window again, staring out at the city lights. Her aides hovered, phones buzzing with updates, strategy pouring from their lips. But Jasmine barely heard them. Her mind replayed the words, 9 seconds, shatter her legacy. They were trying to turn her own strength into a weapon against her. And it was working. Meanwhile, Melania sat in her suite, sipping tea. Her lawyer debriefed, excitement thrumming through every word. We turned around. We shifted the tide. Tomorrow, we build on it. Tomorrow, she's on the defensive. Melania set the cup down gently. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She only whispered, almost to herself, legacies don't shatter so easily. But deep down, She knew they already had. Her victory today wasn't clean. It was stained, complicated, and fragile. And Jasmine knew one thing, too. If they wanted to turn her words into weapons, she'd have to fight with something they couldn't forge, something they couldn't fake. The trial was no longer just about evidence. It was about survival. And tomorrow, one of them would bleed. The fifth day began under a sky the color of iron. The courthouse loomed darker, its stone facade streaked with rain from a night before. Crowds gathered earlier than usual, voices hoarse, signs sagging with moisture, but the energy had not dimmed. If anything, it had sharpened. Everyone knew this was it. Inside, the courtroom was hushed. No murmurs this time. No restless fidgeting. Just silence, thick as smoke. Melania Trump entered first, clad in white. The color was deliberate, a symbol of purity, of dignity untainted. She walked slowly, each step measured, as though the floor itself might fracture under her weight. Her lawyer trailed behind, face tight, but eyes still lit with the embers of yesterday's momentum. Then came Jasmine Crockett. She wore navy blue, the shade of midnight before dawn. Her shoulders were square, her stride firm. She carried no folder, no papers, only herself. It was a statement. Truth doesn't need props. The judge struck the gavel. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today we will hear closing arguments. And then your decision. A tremor of anticipation rippled through the room. Reporters leaned forward, pens hovering. Cameramen adjusted lenses with trembling fingers. The defense began. Melania's lawyer spoke with fire, his words rising and falling like a preacher before the pulpit. This case is about dignity, about respect, about a woman whose silence was weaponized, whose grace was twisted into guilt. You have seen the documents. You have read the memos. You know the truth. Representative Crockett did not stumble into this defamation. She orchestrated it. He turned, gesturing toward Jasmine. His voice sharpened, blade-like. She sought to destroy a legacy in 9 seconds. But you, the jury, hold the power to decide whether legacies can be stolen so cheaply. Today, you can stand for honor. He ended with a bow of his head, his hand resting lightly on Melania's shoulder. She remained still, her face unreadable, eyes fixed forward like a queen awaiting judgment. Then Jasmine rose. Her voice was softer than his, but it carried farther. Each syllable landed not with force, but with clarity, like water dripping in a cavern where silence magnifies every sound. This case is not about honor. It is not about dignity. It is about fear. She paused, letting the words sink. My opponent would have you believe that I orchestrated lies, that memos and drafts speak louder than testimony sworn under oath. But ask yourself, what cannot be fabricated? What cannot be planted? Documents, screenshots, even words on a page can be twisted. But truth, lived truth, cannot. She stepped closer to the jury, her gaze steady, unflinching. You heard the witness. You saw the reaction in this very room. You felt it. For 9 seconds, the mask slipped, and in those 9 seconds, the truth showed itself. Jasmine's voice grew stronger, but not louder. This case is not about whether Melania Trump was defamed. It is about whether America will accept silence as a substitute for truth, whether legacy is built on honesty or on shadows. You do not just decide for her. You decide for all of us. Because one day, when power comes knocking at your door, you will remember this moment. She stopped. No dramatics. No flourish. Just silence that felt like a drumbeat. Then she sat. The judge turned to the jury. You will now retire to deliberate. The room exhaled. The jurors filed out, faces grave. The door closed behind them with a sound heavier than thunder. Hours passed. The courtroom became a waiting room of history. Some whispered, some dozed, some scrolled endlessly through glowing screens. But Jasmine and Melania sat still, facing forward, two statues carved from opposite stone. Finally, the door creaked open. The jury filed back in, eyes heavy, steps slow. The foreman stood. His voice trembled but did not break. We, the jury, find in favor of the defendant. The words cut like glass. Melania's face froze. Her lawyer's jaw dropped, the color draining from his cheeks. A collective gasp rippled through the gallery. Reporters scribbled like mad, some already racing for the doors to blast headlines into the world. Jasmine closed her eyes briefly, just once, then opened them. She didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She only nodded, as though she had known all along that truth was patient, not loud. The judge struck the gavel. This court is adjourned. And just like that, it was over. Outside, the city roared. Supporters lifted Jasmine's name like a hymn. Opponents screamed betrayal. Hashtags flared, news alerts screamed. History shifted one more inch. But inside her SUV, Melania sat in silence. The white suit that was meant to symbolize purity now felt like a shroud. Her lawyer muttered about appeals, about spin, about strategy. She didn't answer. She stared out the window, watching raindrops race each other down the glass. A legacy doesn't shatter in one moment, she thought. It shatters piece by piece until there's nothing left to hold. Jasmine, meanwhile, stood on the courthouse steps. The crowd pressed forward, microphones surged, cameras blinded. She raised one hand, not for silence, but for attention. Her words were not for the trial anymore, not for Melania, not even for the cameras. They were for everyone. This trial was never just about two women. It was about all of us. It was about whether we let power tell us what is real, whether we let fear silence us. The jury said no, and I say no, and I hope every one of you says no too. Her voice rose, steady, unwavering, because the truth doesn't bow, not to money, not to power, not to fear. The truth is patient. The truth endures, and the truth always wins. The crowd erupted, but Jasmine didn't bask in it. She stepped back, letting the roar wash over her, eyes lifting to the gray sky above. And in that moment, the story shifted. It was no longer about Melania Trump or Jasmine Crockett, not about legacies or lawsuits. It was about the parable carved out of their clash. Power without humility corrodes. Silence without honesty imprisons. But truth, slow, stubborn, unglamorous truth, outlives them all. The narrator's voice would have closed it like scripture. What will you choose when your 9 seconds come? Will you cling to shadows? Or will you stand in the light? Will you chase control? Or will you live with integrity? The trial ended with a verdict. But the lesson, it belonged to everyone. And somewhere in the quiet of a storm-touched city, two women went their separate ways. One carried fury. One carried fire. But both carried history.